What is your biggest secret you keep from everyone? Story 1. Back in HS, my friend died after he attempted a jump on his dirt bike. At his funeral, we were instructed to say the last things X said to us. Me and the others that were there for his last jump made a pact to lie. We said his last words were, rock on, and other forms of that, when in fact his last words were, beep you beeps, watch this. Story 2. When I was 17, my best friend was 16 and a year behind me in school. We had met in a split class of grade 4 and 5 students. A couple weeks after the new school year started, we went out biking on a weekend and he went over an edge on the path we were on and died. It was a 25-foot drop onto a rocky ridge line and then into a river, another 50 feet below, and he landed head first. It was declared an accident. His bike had slipped on something and lost control, and he went right over the edge. I was riding in front and didn't notice anything till I heard the crash behind me. He didn't make a sound going over the edge. When I turned around and looked, it was a sight I will never forget and still have nightmares about. I had a cell phone with me and called 911, but there was nothing to be done. Even from up where I was, I could see his helmet had cracked and blood pooling around his head. His family blamed me for the death, even though it was an accident, saying I had pushed him to ride too hard. It was a bike path in the city, but they need an excuse. Or that I had distracted him, stuff like that. About 9 months later, I had to clear out our locker at school. Even though I was in grade 12 and he was in grade 11, we arranged to share a locker at the end of the school year. As I was cleaning it out, I found an envelope taped to the bottom of a shelf addressed to me. I took it home, and it was more than a month before I could open it, 2 days after my 18th birthday. And it turned out to be a suicide note he had written the Friday before the accident. It laid it all out, including the very details of how he planned to do it, down to the bend in the pathway that he had no guardrail and the reason for why he was doing it. It has been almost 8 years since I opened that note and have only told a lawyer, who I contacted about having to turn the note over to the cops. He said no and gave me a detailed written explanation for me to keep and a counselor a couple years later. The note and the explanation from the lawyer in a lockbox, as I cannot bring myself to get rid of it. To this day, his family still blames me for his death, but I refuse to tell them the truth, as their religious beliefs would make it impossible to bear. Edit. Okay, wow, way more response to this than I thought I would get. Given the volume of comments, I'm just going to clear up a few things so I can hopefully answer a majority of questions about this situation and why I posted it. First of all, I know that it seems stupid to post it like this after keeping the secret for so long when it can be easily recognizable. So I will admit that I changed certain details when writing it up, possibly including method of death, relative ages, genders, and timing. Next, he was from a very fundamentalist Christian family, so I doubt any of them would be on Reddit and seeing this post. Beyond that, we were not popular and were in a very large high school with few friends. Me and my mom were the only non family at the funeral. I was the youngest of the kids in the family by a fair margin, and all my brothers had moved out at least 3 years before this happened, and I had been estranged from my father for years before that. None of my brothers really know what happened to this friend, and I am the only in contact with one of them, and I know him and my mom are not on Reddit. After I graduated college, I moved across the country for work, and none of my current friends that may be on Reddit would recognize the story as I have never talked about it with them. Story 3. When I was 19, I was raped repeatedly over the course of 2 days by a 40-year-old man. I'm a guy. There are very few resources available to me, and almost 10 years later, it still affects my ability to have beep. Although I've been making breakthroughs recently in therapy and things are finally looking optimistic. Story 4. My longtime partner thinks the first time we met was at a party hosted by a mutual friend in 2005. She's wrong. We met in '04. I used to work in a video game store. She walked in and asked me about a game, bought it, and left. It wasn't a love at first sight thing or anything, but when I met her a year later, I recognized her instantly. Since it was a bit awkward to introduce myself, the clerk who served you at such and such a place, I played along like I'd never seen her before. Things developed, and she's so enormed by the story of us meeting for the first time at this beep little party in the middle of nowhere that I've never had the heart to tell her or ask her about the little boy she called her son that day in the store. Story 5. I was walking home from my school. I was 13. It's a remote path near a forest. When this dude walked up to me and started talking, I started walking faster and tried to politely tell him to beep off, but he wouldn't listen. He reached for a beep and told me to go with him. I tried to escape, but he chased me down and wrestled me for quite a bit on the ground and tried to beat me. During this fight, I grabbed the hand that he was holding a beep with, twisted it, and beeped him right in the stomach. Blood poured on my t shirt. The guy was screaming, and I ran away. 2 days later, I bought a local newspaper that had an article in which the police bragged about finding a local beep after he was admitted to hospital with a beep wound. I've never told this to anyone. Story 6. My younger sister is severely mentally handicapped. She only learned to walk, sort of. She usually can't go more than a few stumbling feet by herself when she was 10 years old and has the communication abilities of an infant. That is, when she wants something or is bothered in the slightest, she screams. But unlike an infant, she has the lung capacity of a 20-year-old woman. The sound of her scream is horrifying. It's not really like the scream of a person who has learned to scream. Caring for her is a 24/7 job. My mom barely gets any sleep because she's up most nights trying to keep my sister from fussing. And it's not just that. My sister is strong and likes to hit and dig her nails into your arm until she draws blood. There is no apparent rewarding side to caring for her because not only is there not affection from her, but I've often wondered if she even knows who any of us are. My family has people come in to take care of her while my parents are at work, but the women sent by the agencies are almost always horrible pieces of human poop. The two exceptions were nursing students who couldn't keep working with us when they graduated. Other than that, we have super ghetto slash white trash women who have stolen from us, brought their convict boyfriends into our home, and mostly spend the time at our house watching TV, talking on our phone, using our computer, and ignoring my sister. My parents learned not to complain to the agency because they always send someone just as bad to replace the last. And my parents just shrug and now say, well, at least she's not violent. My parents aren't happy. I don't think we've done anything as a family more than a couple of times since my sister was born. My mom developed an anxiety disorder. I only realized how anxious and pressed I was living at home when I moved out to go to college. When I think about the fact that if something happens to my parents, I'll be responsible to my sister, I can't sleep and I just want to cry. I can't send her to a home because it turns out she's too hard to control for most of them to take her. And after dealing with the women sent by agencies, I don't really want to think about leaving her in a state run institution. I've never talked about this with anyone. My real secret is I think my family and my sister will be better off if we could beep her quickly, humanely, and painlessly. There doesn't seem to be a real reason to prolong her life because she seems to spend a lot of it in pain. She's on a lot of medication, some of it for pain, a lot of it for I don't know what. And I can't imagine she feels anything resembling joy. But really, selfishly, it's because the stress of caring for her has left my mom as sort of a shell of a person, and I'm terrified of having to give up my life and career to become what my mom is now for a sister who may not even know who I am.